When she collapsed in his arms, the entire world seemed to stop. The plate she had been carrying shattered across the marble floor. Blood drained from her face. Her body went limp. And for the first time in years, Kang Min-Jae, the man feared by politicians, business tycoons, and criminal syndicates alike, felt pure terror. No. His voice cracked. The staff stood frozen. Nobody had ever heard that voice before. Nobody had ever seen fear in the eyes of the man known as the Ice King of Seoul. But as he dropped to his knees and gathered her into his arms, nothing else mattered. Not money. Not power. Not enemies. Not the empire he had spent 15 years building. Only her. Only Nyah. Her breathing was shallow. Weak. Almost disappearing. Doctors would later say every second mattered. Every second. And Min-Jae would spend the next several months trying to buy those seconds back. He would build an entire hospital wing. Bring specialists from 5 countries. Spend more money than some nations earned in a year. But what he didn't know was that fate had already begun writing a cruel story neither of them were ready for. And sometimes, love arrives too late. If you love Korean billionaire romance and mafia love stories like this, subscribe now to @Physial_Threads and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Long before she became the center of Kang Min-Jae's world, Nyah Min-Jae was simply trying to survive. At 26 years old, she lived quietly in Seoul. Most people never noticed her. She preferred it that way. The African woman had spent years working jobs nobody wanted. Cleaning, cooking, washing dishes. Anything that allowed her to pay rent and continue moving forward. Life had taught her early that dreams were expensive. Far more expensive than she could afford. Yet somehow she never lost her kindness. She smiled often, helped strangers, fed homeless people whenever she could, and carried a warmth that seemed untouched by the hardships she'd endured. What nobody knew was that she was carrying another burden, a secret she hid behind every smile, a condition she refused to talk about, a condition that had already started quietly stealing pieces of her future. But Nyah ignored it. People like her couldn't afford weakness. Meanwhile, across Seoul, Kang Min-Jae ruled an empire. Officially, he was a billionaire CEO. Unofficially, he was the man powerful people called when they wanted impossible problems solved. His companies stretched across Asia. Hotels, technology, shipping, finance. Everything he touched seemed to become gold. Yet behind the success stood a lonely man. A man who trusted nobody. Not after what happened years earlier. The woman he once loved had betrayed him. The friends he considered brothers had sold him out. Even members of his own family had viewed him as a tool. Eventually, he stopped believing in love. Stopped believing in loyalty. Stopped believing people could genuinely care. Money always changed things. Power always changed people. At least that was what he believed. Then one rainy evening changed everything. The previous chef working at Min-Jae's private estate quit without notice. A replacement was urgently needed. Several candidates arrived. Highly trained professionals. Award-winning chefs. Experts with impressive resumes. Then there was Nyah, the least qualified applicant in the room. At least on paper. She wasn't famous. Had never worked in luxury establishments. Didn't have connections. The interview lasted less than 10 minutes. Min-Jae barely looked at her. Until she answered one question. What makes your food different? The room fell silent. Nyah smiled softly. It reminds people they aren't alone. For the first time, Min-Jae looked up. Their eyes met. Something strange happened. A brief silence. An unexpected pause. Then it vanished. Min-Jae immediately dismissed the feeling. He hated emotional answers. Hated sentimentality. Hated anything that reminded him of weakness. Yet 3 days later, Nyah was hired. The mansion itself felt less like a home and more like a palace. Hundreds of employees. Security teams. Private gardens. Luxury beyond imagination. The first day was a disaster. Nothing she did seemed good enough. The staff viewed her as an outsider. The head housekeeper openly criticized her. Even the kitchen assistants mocked her accent behind her back. And Min-Jae? He barely acknowledged her existence. Every meal received the same response. A nod. Or silence. Nothing more. Weeks passed. The tension remained. Then one night, everything changed. Min-Jae returned home later than usual. A difficult board meeting had gone badly. An investment deal had collapsed. Reporters were causing problems. By the time he arrived home, Exhaustion covered his face. The kitchen staff had already left. Only Nyah remained. She noticed immediately. "You haven't eaten." Min-Jae stopped walking. Nobody spoke to him that way. Nobody. Especially not staff. "I'll eat later." "You won't." His eyes narrowed. She pointed toward the dining table. "Sit." For several seconds, neither moved. Then, surprisingly, Min-Jae sat down. Even he didn't understand why. 20 minutes later, she placed a simple bowl of soup in front of him. Nothing fancy. Nothing expensive. Just soup. Min-Jae took one bite. Then another. Then another. Something inside him shifted. Memories. Forgotten memories. His mother making soup during winter. Family dinners before tragedy destroyed everything. Warmth. Comfort. Home. Feelings he hadn't experienced in years. He set down the spoon. "What is this?" Nyah smiled. "Soup." His expression remained serious. "I know it's soup." "Then why ask?" For the first time in years. Kang Min-Jae laughed. A small laugh. Barely noticeable. But real. Neither of them understood it then. Yet that simple bowl of soup had quietly changed the course of their lives. Over the following months, something unexpected happened. The mansion began changing. Or perhaps Min-Jae began changing. Staff members noticed first. He seemed calmer. Less angry. Less distant. The reason always appeared nearby. Nyah. Whenever she entered a room, warmth seemed to follow. She remembered everyone's birthdays. Helped employees solve problems. Listened without judgment. And somehow, she slowly dismantled walls Min-Jae had spent years building. Not through grand gestures, but through small moments. A cup of tea left outside his office after difficult meetings. A meal prepared exactly how he liked it. Conversations that expected nothing in return. What she didn't know was that Min-Jae had started looking for her. Not intentionally. At least that's what he told himself. Yet whenever she wasn't around, he noticed. Whenever she laughed with other staff members, he listened. Whenever she smiled, something inside him felt strangely lighter. It terrified him. Because feelings led to pain. They always did. Then came the night everything changed. A severe snowstorm trapped everyone inside the estate. Roads closed. Electricity briefly failed. Staff members gathered in the main hall. For the first time, Min-Jae joined them. Stories were shared. Games played. Laughter echoed through the mansion. And then Nyah began singing. A soft song from her childhood. The room fell silent. Her voice wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful. Raw. Honest. Human. Min-Jae couldn't look away. Neither could anyone else. Yet as the song ended, something strange happened. Nyah suddenly lost balance. Only briefly. Just for a second. Then she recovered. Nobody noticed. Except Min-Jae. Concern flashed across his face. What was that? She smiled quickly. Nothing. But what she didn't know was that Min-Jae never forgot details. Especially details involving her. And this small moment would soon lead him toward a truth that would shatter everything he thought he knew. Because while love was quietly blooming between them, a dangerous secret was already growing in the shadows. And when that secret finally emerged, neither of their lives would ever be the same again. The moment passed so quickly that everyone else forgot about it. Everyone except Kang Min-Jae. That brief loss of balance. That sudden weakness. The way Nyah had grabbed the edge of the chair before pretending everything was fine. It stayed in his mind long after the snowstorm ended. Long after the staff returned to their rooms. Long after the mansion became silent again. Because Min-Jae had spent years reading people. He knew when someone was hiding something. And Nyah was definitely hiding something. The following morning, he watched her more carefully than before. At breakfast, she smiled. At lunch, she laughed with the kitchen staff. By dinner, she looked perfectly normal. Almost. There were small signs. Tiny details nobody else would notice. Moments when her hand trembled. Times when she paused for a second as though gathering strength. Occasional headaches she tried to conceal. Nothing dramatic. Nothing alarming. Yet enough to make him uneasy. For reasons he couldn't explain. And the feeling only grew stronger. Meanwhile, Nyah continued pretending everything was fine. She had become very skilled at pretending. For nearly 4 years, she had lived with a truth she refused to share. A truth she barely allowed herself to think about. Because every time she thought about it, fear followed. And fear was dangerous. Fear made people stop living. Fear made people give up. So she kept moving. Kept smiling. Kept cooking. kept acting like tomorrow was guaranteed, even when doctors had warned her it wasn't. But what she didn't know was that fate was preparing to force that truth into the light. And very soon, 1 week later, Min-Jae returned unexpectedly from a business trip. His flight landed hours earlier than scheduled. Normally nobody would know. Normally nobody would care. But as he entered the mansion, he heard voices coming from the kitchen. He paused. One voice belonged to Nyah. The other belonged to an older woman from the staff. "Did you take your medication today?" the woman asked softly. Silence. Then Nyah sighed. "No. You can't keep skipping it. I know. You fainted twice this month. I know." The concern in the older woman's voice deepened. "You need treatment." Another silence followed, one that immediately captured Min-Jae's attention. Then Nyah spoke, and her words made his heart stop. "I can't afford treatment." The hallway suddenly felt colder. Min-Jae remained hidden, listening. "Your condition is getting worse," the older woman whispered. "I know. Then why aren't you doing anything?" Nyah's voice cracked, just slightly, just enough to reveal the pain she usually concealed. "Because if I stop working, I lose everything." The conversation ended shortly afterward, but Min-Jae couldn't move. His mind replayed those words again and again. "Your condition is getting worse. Treatment. Medication. Fainting." The pieces were starting to connect, and he hated what they suggested. That evening he called a private investigator, not because he wanted to invade her privacy, but because he needed answers. By sunrise the next day, he had them, and the truth hit him harder than any betrayal he'd ever experienced. Nyah was seriously ill, a rare neurological condition. Progressive, dangerous, potentially fatal. Doctors had recommended immediate advanced treatment years ago. Treatment she couldn't afford. Treatment she had been postponing while quietly continuing her life. The medical reports shook in Min-Jae's hands. For several minutes he stared at them, unable to think, unable to breathe, unable to understand why she never told him. Then realization arrived. Because she never wanted pity, never wanted special treatment, never wanted to become someone's burden. For the first time in years, genuine anger filled him. Not toward her, toward the world, toward every circumstance that forced someone as kind as Nyah to suffer alone. That evening he confronted her. She was preparing dinner when he entered the kitchen. The room immediately became silent. Everyone sensed something serious was about to happen. "Leave us." The staff quickly obeyed. Soon only Min-Jae and Nyah remained. She looked confused. "What happened?" He placed a medical file on the counter. The color immediately drained from her face. For several seconds neither spoke. Then she whispered, "You investigated me. I needed answers. You had no right." The hurt in her eyes surprised him, not because she was angry, but because she looked disappointed, as though he had broken something fragile between them. "I was worried." The words escaped before he could stop them. Nyah froze. So did he, because neither of them expected those words. Worried. Such a simple word. Yet it carried emotions neither had been willing to acknowledge. The silence stretched. Heavy. Dangerous. Then Nyah looked away. "It's not your problem. It is now." Her eyes snapped back toward him. "No." "Why not?" "Because I don't belong in your world." The statement hung between them. Painful. Honest. And true. At least from her perspective. Min-Jae stepped closer. "You think I care about status?" She laughed softly. A sad laugh. "Don't you?" The question landed harder than she intended. Because once upon a time, he absolutely had. Money. Power. Influence. Those things had defined his life. But somehow, Nyah had changed that, without even realizing it. For several moments neither spoke. Then Min-Jae quietly said something that changed everything. "I'll pay for your treatment." Her eyes widened instantly. "No. It isn't a request." "No." The answer came stronger this time. More emotional. More desperate. "No." Min-Jae frowned. "Why are you refusing?" Tears suddenly appeared in her eyes. And for the first time since they met, she looked vulnerable. Truly vulnerable. Because the truth wasn't about money. The truth was far deeper. Much more terrifying. "If I accept," she whispered. Her voice broke. "If I accept, I'll start hoping." The confession shattered him, because he understood exactly what she meant. Hope was dangerous. Hope made loss hurt more. Hope made people believe tomorrow would arrive. And when tomorrow didn't come, the pain became unbearable. Nyah wiped away tears quickly, trying to regain control, trying to rebuild the walls she always carried. But it was too late. Min-Jae had finally seen her fear, and seeing it changed him forever. The following weeks became different. Something unspoken existed between them now, a connection neither could deny, a feeling neither wanted to name. Min-Jae stopped pretending she was simply an employee. Nyah stopped pretending his presence didn't affect her. Their conversations grew longer. Their laughter became easier. Their silences became comfortable. And somewhere between those moments, love quietly arrived. Not dramatic love, not sudden love. The kind of love built through trust, understanding, patience, the strongest kind. One evening they sat together in the estate garden. Cherry blossoms drifted through the air. The sky glowed with soft evening colors. For a long time neither spoke. Then Nyah broke the silence. "Can I ask something?" "Anything." "What happened to you?" The question surprised him. Nobody asked about his past. Nobody dared. Yet somehow she always seemed capable of reaching places others couldn't. Min-Jae stared toward the horizon, then slowly began talking. About betrayal. About loneliness. About becoming powerful because weakness once nearly destroyed him. About losing faith in people. And finally, about losing faith in love. When he finished speaking, silence returned. Then Nyah gently took his hand. No words. No speeches. Just a hand resting against his. And somehow that simple gesture healed wounds years of success never could. From that day forward, everything changed. For the first time in years, Min-Jae felt alive. He smiled more, slept better, laughed easier. The mansion transformed. Employees noticed it. Business partners noticed it. Even rivals noticed it. Because the man once known as Seoul's coldest billionaire had become someone different. Someone happier. The reason always had the same name. Nyah. But while their hearts were moving closer together, her body was moving in the opposite direction. The headaches became worse. The dizziness increased. Fatigue arrived more often. And despite her efforts to hide it, Min-Jae noticed. Every time. One evening, he found her sitting alone in the garden, crying quietly. The sight instantly alarmed him. Nyah. She quickly wiped her face. But it was too late. He had already seen. The fear. The exhaustion. The heartbreak. And then she finally admitted the truth she had hidden for years. "I'm scared." The words came out as a whisper. A broken whisper. One that nearly shattered his heart. Min-Jae sat beside her. She stared toward the stars. "I keep pretending I'm brave." Her voice trembled. "But I'm terrified." The tears returned. This time she didn't stop them. "I don't want to die." The confession broke something inside him. Because for all his money, all his power, all his influence, he suddenly felt helpless. And he hated it. He reached for her hand, held it tightly, then made a promise. The kind of promise that would soon change both their lives forever. "You won't face this alone." She looked at him, eyes filled with tears, filled with fear, filled with something else too. Love. The same love reflected in his own eyes. Neither spoke the words. Not yet. But both understood. And for the first time, tomorrow felt possible. What neither of them knew was that tomorrow was already running out. Because fate had been quietly counting down the days. And very soon, everything would change. The following weeks became the happiest period either of them could remember. Not because Nyah was getting better. She wasn't. Not because life had suddenly become easier. It hadn't. But because neither of them were pretending anymore. For the first time since arriving at the estate, Nyah allowed herself to be cared for. And for the first time in many years, Kang Min-Jae allowed someone close enough to see the man behind the power. The walls between them disappeared little by little. Every morning began with breakfast together. Every evening ended with conversations that stretched late into the night. Sometimes they talked about childhood memories. Sometimes about dreams. Sometimes about absolutely nothing. Yet somehow those simple moments became precious. Because both understood something neither dared say aloud. Time was becoming valuable. Very valuable. Meanwhile, her condition continued quietly advancing. There were good days. Days when she laughed freely. Days when she seemed almost healthy. Days that gave everyone hope. Then there were bad days. Days when walking became difficult. Days when headaches left her unable to leave her room. Days when fear returned. And each bad day affected Min-Jae more than he admitted. Because watching someone you love suffer is its own kind of pain. A pain money cannot solve. A pain power cannot erase. A pain that leaves even the strongest people feeling helpless. One evening they stood together on a balcony overlooking the city. Seoul glowed beneath them, millions of lights stretching endlessly into the distance. Nyah leaned against the railing, a soft smile on her face. Beautiful. Min-Jae looked at her. Not the city. Her. And quietly answered. Very. The moment lasted several seconds. Neither moved. Neither looked away. Then Nyah laughed softly. You weren't talking about Seoul. No. Her smile widened. For the first time, neither pretended. For the first time, they allowed the truth to exist between them. Raw, honest, undeniable. And yet neither realized how little time remained. Because fate was approaching. Quietly, patiently, waiting for the perfect moment. And it arrived sooner than anyone expected. 3 weeks later, the estate hosted a charity gala. One of the largest events Min-Jae organized each year. Business leaders, celebrities, government officials, hundreds of influential guests filled the mansion. Everything appeared perfect. The evening flowed smoothly. Guests praised the food. Music echoed throughout the ballroom. Laughter filled the air. Nyah moved through the event, ensuring everything ran properly. Despite her worsening condition, she insisted on helping. She always did. That was who she was. Someone who gave even when she had little left to give. Near midnight, she carried a tray through the ballroom. Several guests complimented her. She smiled politely. Then suddenly, the room tilted. A sharp pain exploded behind her eyes. Her vision blurred. Voices became distant. The tray slipped from her hands. Glasses shattered. People turned, confused. Then horror spread across the room. Because Nyah collapsed. Hard. Directly onto the marble floor. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Someone screamed. Others rushed forward. But nobody moved faster than Kang Min-Jae. 1 second he was across the room. The next he was on his knees beside her. His heart pounding violently. Fear consuming every thought. Nyah. No response. Nyah. Still nothing. The sight terrified him. Her skin looked pale. Too pale. Her breathing weak. Too weak. For the first time in years. Kang Min-Jae panicked. Completely. Absolutely. The powerful billionaire who never showed emotion gathered her into his arms. Ignoring everyone watching. Ignoring the whispers. Ignoring the shocks spreading through the crowd. Nothing mattered except her. Nothing. As emergency teams arrived, Min-Jae climbed into the ambulance beside her, holding her hand, refusing to let go, refusing to leave, refusing to accept what his heart already feared. The next several hours became a nightmare. Doctors rushed through hallways. Machines beeped endlessly. Specialists arrived. Tests began. And Min-Jae waited. Alone. Powerless. Terrified. Finally, shortly before sunrise, a senior doctor approached. The expression on his face revealed everything. And yet Min-Jae still asked, "Tell me." The doctor hesitated, then spoke. The condition had progressed significantly. There were complications. Severe complications. Immediate intervention was required. Without advanced treatment, the future looked grim. Very grim. The words struck like knives. For several moments Min-Jae couldn't respond. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. Then something changed inside him. Determination. Absolute determination. If there was even one chance to save her, he would find it. No matter the cost. No matter the sacrifice. No matter what it required. And that decision would soon shock the entire world. Because over the following months Kang Min-Jae did something nobody expected. Something unprecedented. Something extraordinary. He built a hospital. Not a donation. Not a medical grant. Not a charity fund. An entire hospital wing. State-of-the-art facilities. Advanced equipment. Leading specialists. Research laboratories. Everything designed around one goal. Saving Nyah. The media couldn't believe it. Business analysts couldn't explain it. Investors called it irrational. Friends called it obsession. Enemies called it weakness. Min-Jae ignored all of them. Because for the first time in his life, he understood something important. Love isn't measured by what you keep. It's measured by what you're willing to give. And he was willing to give everything. Months passed. The hospital opened. Specialists arrived from around the world. Doctors from Korea, Japan, Germany, Canada, the United States. Every possible treatment was explored, every option considered, every opportunity pursued. And throughout it all, Min-Jae never left her side. Not once. He attended meetings remotely, ran businesses from hospital rooms, slept beside her bed, held her hand through procedures, read books to her, played her favorite songs, spoke to her every day, even when she couldn't answer. Because after her collapse, Nyah never fully woke up. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. And eventually, the hospital room became their world. The most heartbreaking part was that she occasionally responded. A slight movement, a tiny squeeze of his hand, a small change in expression. Enough to create hope. Enough to keep him believing. Enough to keep him fighting. But never enough. Never enough. One rainy evening nearly a year after her collapse, Min-Jae sat beside her bed. The room was quiet. Only the sound of rain against glass remained. For a long time, he simply looked at her. The woman who had changed his life. The woman who taught him kindness. The woman who showed him trust. The woman he loved. Then finally, he said the words he should have spoken long ago. I love you. Tears filled his eyes. I should have told you sooner. His voice cracked. You taught me how to live again. The room remained silent. Machines continued their rhythm. Rain continued falling. And for a moment, it seemed as though nothing would happen. Then, a tear rolled down Nyah's cheek. One single tear. Min-Jae froze. His heart stopped. His breath disappeared. Because he knew. Somewhere deep inside. She heard him. The months continued. Hope rose. Hope fell. Hope rose again. Doctors remained uncertain. Nobody could predict the outcome. Nobody knew what tomorrow would bring. Then one morning, everything changed. A nurse entered the room carrying flowers. Routine. Ordinary. Nothing unusual. Until she suddenly dropped them. The vase shattered. Water spilled everywhere. Because the impossible had happened. Nyah's eyes were open. For a moment nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody spoke. Then alarms sounded. Doctors rushed in. Nurses followed. The entire floor erupted into activity. Word spread rapidly. And moments later Min-Jae burst through the doorway. His heart pounding. His mind refusing to believe what he had been told. Then he saw her. Awake. Looking at him. Actually looking at him. The silence that followed felt eternal. Neither spoke. Neither moved. Both simply stared, trying to process the miracle unfolding before them. Then Nyah smiled. A weak smile. A tired smile. But unmistakably hers. And suddenly, all the fear, all the pain, all the sleepless nights, all the months of uncertainty, collapsed at once. Min-Jae crossed the room, fell to his knees beside her bed, and cried. Not quietly, not secretly, openly, honestly, the way people cry when their hearts finally release years of pain. Nyah reached toward him, her hand trembling, and gently touched his face. I heard you. His eyes widened. What? Her smile deepened. Every word came slowly, but clearly. I heard everything. The books, the stories, the conversations, the promises, the confession, everything. Every single day, she had heard him. The realization overwhelmed him. Because during his darkest moments, he often wondered whether his words mattered, whether she knew he was there, whether she could feel his love. Now he finally had the answer. Yes, she knew. She always knew. Recovery took time. A lot of time. There were difficult days. Physical therapy. Rehabilitation. Challenges. Frustrations. But they faced every obstacle together, just as they always had. And eventually, Nyah walked out of the hospital. Not alone. Never alone. With Min-Jae beside her. Exactly where he intended to remain. Several months later, the same hospital wing continued operating. Not for profit. Not for publicity. But to help others facing battles similar to hers. Patients arrived from around the world. People who once had nowhere to go. Families who had lost hope. Children who needed treatment. And every single one received care. Because what began as a desperate attempt to save one woman had become something much bigger. Something beautiful. Something lasting. Years later, journalists often asked Min-Jae why he built the hospital. Most expected complicated answers. Business reasons. Public image explanations. Strategic benefits. Instead, he always gave the same response. A simple response. The truth. Because someone I loved deserved a chance. And for him, that was enough. This story reminds us that love isn't about status. It isn't about money. It isn't about power. Real love is showing up again and again, even when things look impossible. Real love is choosing someone on their worst days, not just their best ones. Real love is sacrifice, loyalty, patience, hope, and sometimes the greatest miracles happen because someone refuses to stop believing. If you made it this far, let us know where you're watching from and comment your favorite moment below, like this video, and subscribe to @Physial_Threads for more emotional Mafia love stories.